Welcome, 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 and good day to all of you. So, this is our penultimate class. There will be this class, there will be next week for review, and then there will be exams. We are quickly drawing the semester to a close. I'm going to be burning the midnight oil to try to get the marking done. I appreciate that it's been lagging behind a bit, but I've had certain administrative duties that just coincidentally have ramped up at precisely the same time that the marking has as well. So I'm sure you've all been in a situation like that before. I apologize. I'll try to get things out to you as quickly as possible. So today we are going to talk about frameworks. Now, the most important thing to remember about frameworks is that they are supposed to make your life easier. Perhaps by the end of this you'll think, oh, this isn't as easy as it should be for a thing that's supposed to make my life easier, but once you get things set up and working and ready to go, Laravel is actually easier than native PHP development. You will find that a lot of things have been done for you. So the motivation behind this, right? There are many things in server-side development which are kind of routine tasks, right? You can imagine it's important for us to have learned for the first time how connecting to a database works. But you can imagine that pretty much every web application that needs to connect to a database must do so in more or less the same way. This is true of many of our features of a web application. So, part of the whole purpose of programming and progress in developing programming languages is to attempt to reduce the amount of busy work that can be done by the computer so that we are left to focus on the interesting bits. This is the design intent behind Laravel. Laravel is a PHP framework, so the language underlying it is PHP. There are many other different frameworks that you can use as well. Most notably Node.js. Node.js is a framework using JavaScript instead of PHP, but you can find frameworks for pretty much any language you may wish to use. There is an advantage in using popular ones. If you are using a popular framework, that means that it has an active development community. An active development community means that you have a much better chance of having your questions answered on forums and that sort of thing. The software itself is much more likely to be frequently updated, which is useful. And not just for security updates, but also for improvements to functionality over time. So, Laravel. It's a bit of a pain in the keister to set up. There are many steps, including downloading, a number of pieces of unrelated software. So, rather than spend basically the entire 4 hours walking everyone through the installation process, we're going to use a virtual machine that was very kindly set up for us by Dr. Brown.
But it says I can use it on my Mac too, right?
Oh, certainly, yes.
Without a virtual machine.
You can do it without a virtual machine. I don't recommend it. I don't recommend it because, again, have you ever tried to install anything on Linux? Then I don't recommend it. Do you know what an environment variable is?
Yes, I have a little bit of ideas on that question.
Yeah, so it's a process. There are steps, but it's very likely that these steps go wrong at some point, and you will have to fall back on Linux knowledge that you basically don't have. Not that it's not a useful skill to acquire, particularly of a person in your profession. However, this is not the last time you folks are going to touch frameworks. You will be seeing them again in a later course. Perhaps these types of details can be more deeply addressed at that point. For us, in the context of a course on web programming, all I'm really trying to give you here is the flavor of things, and enough knowledge that can get you through your final assignment. Does that make sense? You'll find that assignment 6 looks quite similar to some previous assignments that you've already done, most particularly the one about database access. So, if you haven't already done so, please download laravelsetup.ova. Laravelsetup.ova is a virtual machine designed for VirtualBox, Oracle's VirtualBox software, which is natively installed on your lab computers. If you happen to have it on your own machine, please feel free to use your own machine as well. Does everybody have the VM downloaded? Yes? Is it still working on it for you?
It's still downloading.
Okay. Okay. Do you have it?
Yes, it's already downloaded.
Good. I'm just going to sneak a peek at your progress bar. That's not too bad. So you folks have used virtual machines for this other course, I think it was a CentOS Linux distro. Were you doing that through VMware or VirtualBox or? Okay, so you already have some familiarity with the software. That's good. So this is VirtualBox, as I'm sure you're aware. We want to import the OVA. Import. Source will be local file system. Choose the file to import. That will be the OVA file that we have downloaded. Open her up. Then, next. So this operating system is Ubuntu. If you know anything about Linux distributions, you have likely heard of Ubuntu. How many people have heard of Ubuntu? Fantastic. Just heard of it? Well, you'll have some time to familiarize yourself with it. As Linux distributions go, Ubuntu is it's a highly popular one, although in recent years, it's kind of been going the same way as Debian. It was extremely popular, but now people have come up with sub-variants of it, and Ubuntu itself, while it's still very much an active and developed operating system, other sort of Ubuntu derivatives have now taken Ubuntu's place as like most popular Linux distribution. So when people write software for Linux, generally they write for families of Linux. 3 of the main families are Arch Linux, Debian/Ubuntu, and Fedora/Red Hat. think CentOS might be a Fedora Red Hat derivative. So, being the most popular of those three, Ubuntu has the most software compatible with it. But things like Bash do not change between Linux distributions. Does this make sense? So, Ubuntu is a fantastic choice if you're just looking to install a Linux distribution. Personally, like on my own personal machines, I normally use some Ubuntu derivative, either Linux Mint or KDE Neon or something like that. But Ubuntu is the best if you want compatibility with like things that also run on Windows. Anyway, so finish. There we go. Import. Oh man. Okay, so these lab computers are a lot slower than my laptop.
It'll take
It'll take a minute. I should have done that and then given my spiel about Linux. Oh man.
I waited for you too.
Oh, I'm sorry. Arch Linux is cool, but like if you want something that really looks space age, you should go for like an Arch based distro. Manjaro is one. Another fun thing you can do is take like really old laptops and install extremely lightweight Linux distributions on them, like Bodhi. Anyway, okay, so here we are. Laravel setup. Let's launch this bad boy. Ubuntu. All right. So the resolution is going to be terrible, but you can set that from the system settings. So we have one user preset up named Laravel. Password is the same as the username. It is recommended that you complete assignment 6 from within this VM. It's already been configured for it. Make sense? So, here we go. Here is our VM. Does everybody have this working? Can everybody see the jellyfish?
Yeah.
Yeah, good, 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 good. So now that we've got that far, let's talk about Laravel. So this is the concept of a framework in general, not just the concept of a PHP framework. As I said, not all frameworks are PHP, some are JavaScript, some are other languages. So, the purpose of a framework is to provide predefined structures, functionality, libraries, and plugins for creating web applications. The whole point is to make this easier for everyone. For example, this framework implements MVC architecture, that is to say, Laravel. We are responsible for implementing individual views, models, and controllers, but do you remember, like when we were working in just plain PHP, that the models we're usually just reskinning some database accesses, right? That is not interesting work, according to Laravel and other frameworks. Establishing a connection to the database, setting up the queries, sending stuff off, having to instantiate the PDO object, all of that stuff, right? That's all busy work that Laravel can do for us. Most of the model disappears, at least insofar as the complexity of things we've been doing so far, right? Obviously, things get more complicated later, but for us, Laravel takes the m and diminishes it down to a tiny little m, and we are mostly working in V and C. Does that make sense? So, frameworks can also implement user authentication, where we decide which pages to guard, and the framework comes with configuration files where we fill out our credentials and it takes care of the actual connections and that sort of thing. It is actually easier to modify a configuration file than to implement the connection itself. Incidentally, our virtual machine instance has been pre-configured. It should just work. So, some additional PHP frameworks include Cake PHP, CodeIgniter, Symfony, and of course the one we are talking about, Laravel. PHP frameworks themselves can typically be extended with additional libraries and packages. So, for example, MySQL is a very common database MySQL is a very common type of SQL database that you integrate into these applications. But, for example, if you wanted to use MongoDB, which is a non-SQL database, you would find an extension for that type of database. You'd plug it in, and then hopefully everything would work reasonably consistently. Of course, you wouldn't be providing it SQL queries because it's not an SQL database, but anyway. So, as already stated, I have quite a few slides, so I'm going to be zipping through them a little faster than usual. Why use a PHP framework? Once again, it makes things faster and easier to develop. It takes care of a lot of the basic functionality without you having to do much. It accelerates development. Basically, any time that you spend fiddling around in back-end code that you don't have to spend there is time that you are wasting, and your boss is not happy paying you for time that you're wasting, right? You can't, once you get used to one of these frameworks, you can spin up a web application very quickly. But using a framework is a skill. You have to get used to the framework. Like, it's a skill that you spec into, basically, using a framework. Oh, also, using a framework will typically make your app more secure, as a lot of the security back-end stuff that you normally have to worry about, it's taking care of it for you, right? You'll notice that we don't have a lot of things in this, like reading things out of get and post superglobals directly, or using filter input.
Really?
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff, it's like, when would you ever not do that, right? So, it's in the framework. Sounding appealing already, right?
Yeah.
So, communities around PHP frameworks are very powerful in and of themselves. If you have a problem, the framework puts everyone on the same page, and you are more likely to find an answer in an online community. So if you're having a problem like I'm having trouble connecting to the database, right? If you're working in just plain old vanilla PHP, it's like, well, that could be any number of things. But because, Laravel is pre-written and pre-configured for so many things, somebody on the forum can say, well, the problem is probably in your configuration file. So, this is the number of stars that each of a number of different frameworks have on GitHub. You'll notice this data is a little bit old, but project current trends and stuff. Maintenance people, I'm pretty sure. That sounds like a human and not a rodent, so. So, you will notice this one is Laravel. At the time when this data was taken, it was the most popular PHP framework. Other interesting ones include this, which is Symfony, this Cyan, Code Igniter, and Yi framework, been quite popular. But you can see that basically there are a large number of these things, right? So this is kind of how software development works now in the open source community. You can think of something like GitHub or the open source movement as being a very, very free market, right? Basically, all of these projects are projects people have started to try to get in on a market, right? Between 2010 and 2012, when most of these projects originated, basically, you have a couple of early ones that sort of develop the concept, right? Other developers notice these and are like, oh, that looks like a good idea, I'm going to do my own version of that. So then you have a cluster of people who are all developing their own projects based on the ideas that were presented by the early adopters, right? They get gradually more and more popular. The original guys usually don't get anywhere at all, right? Like, think about it this way, right? How many people use Alta Vista these days?
No idea.
Yeah. Does it even still exist? How many people even use like Yahoo search, which was also an earlier one?
Not anymore.
Right? Like Yahoo has had to diversify its online business into like many other different types of things. Like almost nobody uses Yahoo as a search engine anymore. But that's because in the early days, right, you had these early search engines like Yahoo and Alta Vista that sort of broke the ice on the concept. Then you've got people who come along like Google who are like, oh, that's a good idea. I bet we could do that better. And then they did, and then, and that's how software development works to an extent, right? But anyway, so Laravel, still fairly popular. Here is basically popularity in terms of its actual number of votes in a popularity contest on some website. You can see that like there are all of these frameworks. So basically, people will like a particular framework because these are all related packages of software. They're all going to do reasonably similar things, but it is like it's not completely transferable. Like knowing how to set up and run Laravel does not necessarily tell you how to run like Falcon.php, for example, unless it's like an overt Laravel clone, which does occasionally happen. So, yes. So Laravel is a heavyweight framework. It's got a lot of out-of-the-box functionality. It has the strongest community, suitable for large-scale applications, and supports MVC architecture. It used to be more difficult to install and learn, but has improved a lot over the years. Ha! It used to be more difficult to install, if you can possibly imagine that. This is the logo. Behold. So why Laravel? Number one, it uses MVC, which is what we've been learning in class so far, and you should know MVC. Number two, it has a sophisticated routing system which can be used to build REST APIs. Do you guys know what a REST API is? There's going to be a lot of terms like this in this one, because this is touching on a lot of advanced topics that it's like, I'll do my best to give quick summaries, all right? So, what a REST API is, it's a server that you fire request packets at it, but the intention is not that it returns whole web pages, but only that it that packet performs one database operation and just returns success or failure, or you're requesting, a particular line out of a database, you fire off the packet, you get that sort of slim response. The purpose of REST, one of the things that makes REST APIs useful is that applications other than browsers can use them, right? Obviously, if you're in a browser, you want an HTML page, but if you're firing HTML requests off from, for example, a C# script, right, or a C# program, you don't have any browser to render the HTML in, right? So all you really want is the data, right? So that's, roughly speaking, what a REST API is for. Does that make sense? It gets a little, more complicated than that, obviously, but REST stands for Representational State Transfer. Laravel has active record patterns, making accessing databases easier. Only PHP code is needed. And it also has a thing called blade templates. The purpose of blade templates is to make integrating PHP code into HTML pages less clunky. Basically, it has it slightly reworks how PHP tags look and work, and that's the purpose. We're going to be using that a little bit as well. So, good. So, Laravel installation, you have two options. You can use the provided virtual machine, or you can install it yourself. I'm going to skip how you install it yourself. If you want to know that, go for it, but I'm not going to teach you. I will say that if you are running a Windows system and you are doing it this way, you will need to install the Windows subsystem for Linux. Basically, there's no way of doing this without Linux, right? And if you are on a Macintosh, you need to know how to access your bash prompt. Do you know how to access your bash prompt? Terminal and then type
Nano? No?
bash.
Bash.
Yes, because your default shell in Mac is not bash, but you can get to bash by firing up bash. Bash is a program, right? So you just run bash and you have a bash prompt. So, not going to have to explain what a virtual machine is to you, as you already know. So if you end up in a situation where you have to, like, put it on a machine where the requirements are reasonably tight, with this particular virtual machine, the about 8 or 9 gigabytes thinks it should expand to 25 gigabytes in terms of hard drive space, but I found while I was testing this that it does just fine with 20. So you can shave 5 gigs off that and not really suffer. Just don't use the VirtualBox for like your own personal use. You know, just use it for Laravel and you should be fine. So the other thing that you will want to do, it's important to realize, right, that when you have this virtual machine set up, the changes that you make inside of it stay inside of the virtual machine. So if you want to move the thing around from computer to computer, for example, you should all take your work today and save it somewhere, right? You will need to export you'll need to export the virtual machine image the same way that we just imported it, or else you'll lose all your changes. Does that make sense? You folks are probably used to this type of process by now. So, good. Install using Docker, skip. There we go. So, let's fire up our virtual machine. No. Basically, it'll just complain about that because the image is a little old, but no, the software that it's asking us to upgrade is not pertinent to the lesson, so you don't have to upgrade it. Also, I wouldn't recommend it anyways because we're trying to run it on a small amount of hard drive space, and we only have so much memory because it's a virtual machine. So, a new Laravel project has been created for you already. If you go to Home, go to Documents, you will find a folder called Assignment. This is a Laravel project. Let's take a look inside, shall we?
Sorry, Professor, where did you went?
It's, I'm going to do that. Okay. I'm going to keep a running tally on the board of how many times you found it?
Yeah.
I'm going to keep a running tally on the board of how many times I minimize the virtual machine instead of like the program inside of the virtual machine. There we go. So, because I don't want it full screen, because I want to swap back and forth between the slides, right? So, this is what a Laravel installation looks like, or a Laravel project. You'll see we have a number of folders which look kind of strange, with strange names. Oh. So, app is where most application logic will be placed, including controllers. We don't really have to worry about that one. Config contains the config files. We don't really have to worry about that one. That's been done for us. Thank you, Kevin. Database will contain database migration and seed files, which we actually probably won't discuss. That's also been set up for us. Resources contains the view files and raw assets such as JavaScript, and routes, files that define how routing will work. These last two are the ones that we will be primarily concerned about. So, for our purposes, resources contains the views. This is the welcome one. And routes contains a number of PHP files. Laravel intelligently distinguishes between, basically, depending on where the packet is coming from, it will activate one of these or PHP files. The purpose of these PHP files is to act as the controller, right? So the contents of these files will contain things that look like this, which will route based on the incoming URL and other parameters. It will decide which view you should be viewing, and you can put PHP inside of these, right? So don't worry, we're going to get into it. We're going to do a hello world. We're going to do a bunch of stuff. Don't worry about it just yet. We're going to do code examples very soon. So, good. Any questions so far? No? Okay. So, let's talk about routing. So, this is important information without which you will not be able to complete the assignment. So please pay attention. Routing is how Laravel decides what function should be executed in response to the requested URL path. So, basically, there's a concept that's going to be in here, which we haven't really discussed so far. Thus far, when we have wanted to send information to the server, we have done so in the form of get and post parameters. But there is another way to send information to the server, and that is through the URL itself. If you will notice, let's take a look at this thing, right? This is the URL for the current web page on Canvas, right? So, you will hopefully recognize this portion of the URL as being a query parameter, a get parameter, right? Anything after a question mark that's in the form of key value separated by an equal sign, that's a parameter that's being sent. However, you may notice some of these things look like they should also be parameters in the URL, right? For example, 99141. Do we seriously think that on the server there is a 99141 folder? Do we think that it has folders up to 99,141? Not probably, right? That is a URL parameter, right? This information is being extracted from the URL and being decoded as a passed parameter, it's not attempting to directly access a web page. Does this make sense? So, what Laravel does, and what other more advanced web applications do, is to decouple the file system structure from the URL, right? You'll find that this is exceedingly common for any larger web applications. So, wrapping is how Laravel decides what function should execute in response to what URL path is requested. Under routes, we have web.php and api.php. Web.php is for defining web interfaces. That's the one that we're going to be using, folks. API is for defining stateless routes, such as representational state transfer. The general form is route : get. You have your URL. They don't, URLs and URIs are basically the same thing, right? You then have a callback function, right? You remember how, you guys remember from JavaScript how we were setting up events, right? And when we set up, for example, a click event, we defined a callback function that would execute only if that click event happened, right? This is basically doing the same thing, but the event, it's an incoming HTTP request for the URL specified. Does that make sense? All right, shall we, okay. So, I was about to say, let's try it out, but first we have to actually get Laravel running. So let's do that first. So, in our modules on Canvas, there is a very, very, very important file, the Ubuntu image usage README. This tells you how to use the virtual machine, right? So, or at least it gives you important information like what the username and password are. So, you can run the Laravel app from the assignment folder in terminal with the command php artisan serve. So, it does have a somewhat aggressive log out, unfortunately. So the way that that works, navigate to the application folder, that is this one, right-click, open in terminal, PHP artisan serve. Laravel is now running at localhost, port 8000.
Open in terminal, right? You said.
Yes,
Which folder?
that's the right folder. And if you want to be fancy, PHP artisan inspire. There you go. You can get inspirational quotes too if you want to. So, Laravel is now running. It's running a local host on this machine, so we can log into it, or we can access the web pages that it's providing via, once again, a standard web browser. So let's access localhost. We're not getting anything, so try port number 8000. Come on. Is that the, it said it was 8000, didn't it? Okay, so in this case and in this case only, you want HTTP, not HTTPS. It doesn't really matter because it's our local host. It's not going to be insecure or anything like that. But that's a very important point. The full URL is http:// no localhost : 8000. It's important that we have the right port number here because later on in this process we will also be running an XAMPP Apache server on this same machine. That will be operating out of a different port number. So 8000 is our actual web application. There will be another port number for an Apache application through XAMPP that we are not going to be using. Sound good? All right. With everybody so far? Does everybody see this page?
No.
Okay. HTTP. So : / localhost : 8000. Enter. Okay. Show me your terminal. Or you had a terminal running, right?
Yeah, it was running. I closed it before.
Oh, yeah, if you close the terminal, then you closed the program, so relaunch it from the terminal.
Right.
PHP artisan serve.
Sir.
Yeah. PHP, artisan, serve.
That's it?
Yes. Now it's running.
Yeah.
Try refreshing the page. There we go. Did you get it, Brian? Ah, you're not doing that in the VM. That guy.
So I don't have artisan does serve, just the artisan.
Oh, serve is a command.
So. Space,
Space and serve, yeah. Working? Excellent. I'm seeing happy computer screens. Awesome. So, this thing is the welcome page. It's reasonably similar to Apache's welcome page. The idea is that you replace it with something, but we won't worry about it too much. The editor that comes pre-installed on this Ubuntu virtual machine is VS Code. So let's open up VS Code. There we are. Open a folder. Documents, assignment, open. And that just helps everything. Now you can see all of our assignment folders and everything that we need for the application is right now just there in our Explorer pane on the side in VS Code, which helps.
Also the outage not there. Which folder?
Oh yeah, yes. Oh, you're not in the virtual machine.
Oh, here.
Yeah.
Oh,
There you go. Terrible, right? Yes. Good.
Thank you.
Open folder. Assignment. Open. Yes. Yep. Oh no, it's only open browse. File. Open folder. There you go.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Did you get it?
Yeah.
Good. So, take a look at, go into routes, web.php. It's a little bit large, isn't it? There, that's large enough. So, this rule tells us that we are, this is the rule which loads the welcome screen that we just saw, right? Does anybody know what this means in Linux? Yeah, it's just root directory, right? So, if you are accessing the URL with no additional folders or anything specified. This is what rule will activate. So, we then return the view welcome. So let's take a look at our views. Under resources, views, we have welcome.blade.php. And this, as you can see, well, it's not obvious to see, but this is the web page that we viewed. This is the welcome screen in glorious HTML. Look good? Sound good? Everything good? Good, good, good. So, we won't worry about adding a view just yet. Let's worry about just getting a different route going. Setting up our own route. So in web.php, I'd like you to add the following. Route, : get, /hello, function, return, hello world. A thing that you will find working with Laravel is that it gives you actual PHP error messages that are useful. It's like, how even, right? So, perhaps some of you are ahead of me on this, but going back to our web page, if we now access /hello, we get a hello world. Simple, right? Not too bad? So, the get here says that we are responding to a get request. There are corresponding post, update, delete, put. All of your HTTP verbs have a corresponding method here. Does this make sense? Question?
Mine's not working.
404 not found. That would be because you're not using curly braces. This is a code block. Did you get it working?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody get that working? Perfect. So, here, we're literally just returning the string data hello world, right? If we want to return the contents of a web page that we set up, we have to set up a view for that. So, if we go back to VS Code, take a look inside of our views folder, and with frameworks like this, it's very important that things go in the right folder, because this is how the framework knows to look for things, right? So if you write your lovely view, but you don't put it in the views folder, the framework basically doesn't know that it exists. So, new file. Let's call this hello.php. Very quick web page. Feel free to put whatever it is that you might want in it. You may notice a difference between what I have called this web page and what our welcome page is called. Can anybody pick out the difference between the file names? The difference between hello.php and this one, what is it?
It's hello and welcome,
Um,
and blade.blade.com.
so in this one, the hello page, we have welcome.blade.php. Blade is the template engine, which we are going to use a bit later on. Because I have not specified that this is a blade file, no blade processing will occur in it. This is just regular, straight up PHP with no additions, no subtractions. It's just PHP. Okay? Because I want to keep things simple. So, let's see. So, what do we do if we want to link to this page? We set up another route. Get foo, not function, return view hello. You don't have to put the .php in. So now, in my web browser, if I access foo, syntax error. So, this is what I mean when I say that Laravel presents more useful syntax errors than just working in vanilla PHP in a browser does. It gives you the actual line number by highlights it for you and everything. I forgot a semicolon. There we go. Ta-da! You may also notice that that is not the default HTML heading 1, not even the default bootstrap one. So this thing is doing a certain amount of styling for us. just off the bat.
Do I have to open a big file to get access to that or not?
Nope. This is, should be working. Undefined constant foo and which. Can you scroll down here? Ah, needs quotes.
Oh, forgot. Thanks.
Working?
Not quite.
Okay.
Still observing what's going on there.
Okay. Working?
Yeah.
Good.
No?
No. View is a function.
Okay. And there shouldn't be any space between them.
I don't think it matters, but safe.
Okay.
Try it. Foo not found. Okay. Well, yes. Is that what you named the view?
No.
So, go back to your routing. You must use the file name that's used here. So that would be hello, not foo.
Yeah. You are right. Yes, it's working.
It's nice when theory matches reality.
Sometimes when you're learning new things, you forgot the old stuff.
So, Laravel routing can respond to any single HTTP verb, get, post, put, patch, delete options, etc. We are familiar with get and post, but others exist in the HTTP specification. I've mentioned them a couple of times, but things like delete, the purpose of it is to request that something be deleted, right? So if you want a route to match more than one request type, for example, both get and post requests, route match, then you provide a list of the response types that you want to match, and then you proceed as normal. So I will just say here about these characters here. Does anybody know what these two characters are in PHP? They look a little funny in this context, but you've seen them before. Remember your basics.
It's comment?
It's a comment character. Yes. Or that's the comment symbol. So basically, this is like just how to read these slides, but what Dr. Brown has done is he's just put the comment character in here to mean something goes here, right? This function should have some contents, is basically all he's saying. And since you might not want to write a list of all possible request types, pardon me, any will route any request type to a particular it'll run this function if you receive any request type to the particular URL. Is this making sense?
So the any can do both, you mean, right?
It does all of these and more. Yeah. Does that make sense? Have I lost you?
How can it would know that he wants to delete something?
I was lost a while ago, Dr. Moore, I don't understand what this is doing.
Okay,
Sorry,
no trouble.
I just don't understand what is it doing?
Okay,
We're doing routing.
packets. Actually, maybe I can draw on the screen with that there. That might be useful. So
We were at a welcome screen,
yes,
and then suddenly we were routed somewhere else.
sort of. So that's a shame because that's one of my better ovals. So, client server. Client sends an HTTP packet, right? HTTP. That HTTP packet contains certain information, right? One of those pieces of information is the dang URL itself, right? So, let's say that it's, you know, myapp.com/, you know,
Start.
start, sure. Right? And what do you want to send this by? Get or post?
Get.
So this is a get request, right? So let me write a rule for that specifically. Get out, here we go. So, route : get just means from the routing library, I want you to use the get method. All right? So that's what that means. This guy here is technically termed a scope resolution operator. We'll be talking about scopes and namespaces maybe a little bit later, but it's actually not required knowledge for this, so I may end up just skipping it, because it's more useful to me getting you folks up to speed on assignment 6. So, route is the library, get is the request type. Probably you're with me so far, right? Get is a method. The first parameter is what this part of the URL should be. So we take this and plop it right in here. Has to be a string though. You're with me so far? So, between those two pieces, this is called a route. Basically, when we have an incoming packet, we have like a number of views that we have sort of in our library that we might use, right? We are taking the packet and routing it to a particular view. Does that make sense? So, the thing that has to go here is a function, because we need to include some PHP code here, right? So, we can actually like define the function elsewhere and refer to it by name, but most of the time what's used is an anonymous function. Because you'll never need this ever again, right? So that's what an anonymous function looks like in PHP. With me so far? Are we cool like thus far? Okay. So then, the return value of get is what we are sending back to the client, right? So normally with PHP, we use echo statements to send stuff back to the client, right? Basically, in Laravel, we are no longer interested in using echo statements directly, right? That's not a thing we do anymore. We don't use echoes. Whatever the return result here is, that is what's sent back to the client. So, the return result of this function will be sent with a return statement, right? If we send like a string here, then that string will be sent back to the client. That is why up here we are able to send back a hello world, and if we access app at hello, we get hello world. Just that one string. Right? Make sense? So, there we go. In this case, we want to load a web page, not just send back a random string, right? So, the function which loads a view, which is also responsible for finding the views, is just called view. Return view, but you need to give it a file name. You need to say which view we are looking at, right? So, you have to provide a string which is one of the view files you have contained in your views folder. At the moment, we only have two options, which are unfortunately compromised by the state of the board. There we go. We only have welcome and hello. Hello, we wrote, welcome is just the default Laravel splash page, right? If I say view hello, that loads my hello view, right? And it runs it in the way that you would expect PHP to be run, etc., etc. If I view welcome, then I get that page instead. So, if I view hello, save that. If I enter start, you can see I get the hello page that I wrote. Does this make sense?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Do you have any further questions? Yes.
So
So the slash start is a URL parameter, right?
Yes,
But here it is also the directory.
nope, it's not a directory. We don't have any start directory here,
Yeah.
right? Like classically, what this would mean is that you'd have, on your sort of normal Apache server, right? You would have, your, user public HTML/start index.php or .html, and that's like under classical routing, you use the folder structure of the server to do your routing for you, right? Here, you do not. You do not. I couldn't access / resources. It will prevent me from doing so. It will say that's not correct at all.
So in the view function, hello is the PHP file, right?
Yes.
So if there are more than two hellos files, and then do I need to have some add a file name to and directory? Actually,
It allows you
it's-
to do
yeah.
subfolders. So that's an interesting question. So first, let's try to break it. Let's make a new file in here with the same, well, thing is, you're not actually permitted in the file system to have two files with the same name, right? But you could say something like, one is a hello and one is hello.blade.php, right? So let's see if this breaks it. Is it broken? Possibly. It's taking this one over this one. But perhaps you just want two things named hello.
So now the Visual Code is running in the view directory, right?
Yeah, so what's happening is the controller is, so you remember with MVC architecture, we were including one view file versus another depending on what we were doing? It's doing the same thing here. It's just picking them all from this specific folder. That's where Laravel keeps all of its views.
Okay. Then why primary is only under the root?
Which
Clear
one?
under the root, like in a
In the root file?
yes, and then route get and then /start, which means under the root there's you set start parameter under the root. Am I
Oh.
right?
Oh,
So the
I
parameter
think I
is
understand the problem we're having. So homophones. The problem we're having is homophones. So we've got root directory, root like in the root of a tree, right? Then you've got root, which means like your route to get from the grocery store to your home, right? So unfortunately, with my particular accent, these are often pronounced the same. But it can also be pronounced root and route. So, for example, when you talk about a router, which is a particular, piece of electronic equipment, what is a router? It's a thing that routes packets, or routes packets. So, does that make sense?
That means not first one is the route.
yeah, so route is like, again, here's my house, right? Here's the baseball diamond, right? In a park. It's like, it's my route to get to the baseball diamond, right? You can think of like what we do with HTTP packets as being fairly similar to that. If like these are things like routers and interconnected servers, right? Packets bounce from router to router, switch to switch inside of a network. So route, I'll try to pronounce it that way. Root is different, right? So root is the root of the operating system's file system, right? In Unix particularly, we call it root. Linux / Unix root is roughly equivalent to the Windows C drive. I don't know if it has 2 slashes. Doesn't matter. Does that make sense? So this is the thing that all of your files are connected to. So, for example, so how does this concept apply to URLs, right? Well, you have to kind of break the URL down a bit, right? You guys okay if I erase this? So, this is like stuff that I would have hoped that you guys would have gotten in your networking class. So, I'm going to use a different color. Why am I leaving my markers open? Terrible. So, this is your packet type, right? Right? This is your domain. The domain gets resolved into an IP address during DNS domain resolution, I think. Something like that, right? So domain gets converted to an IP, an internet protocol address, right? From here, everything up to here including this slash, right? This is the root of the tree. And then, again, under classic Apache, all of these would be subfolders. But root in Apache does not necessarily mean the root of the hard drive, right? So, in Linux, Why am I showing this to you here? I have a thing right here for it. So in Linux, right, you have the root directory. I'm sure they showed you this at least once, right? So inside of our root directory, that's all of the operating system stuff. If you're running a web server, you don't want people accessing this stuff for obvious reasons. So cd users, sorry, where's the name? I think it's home. Yeah. So /home is where all of the user accounts are kept, right? So on this particular virtual box, we have two accounts. We have Laravel, which is the account that we are currently logged into, and we have one called Linux Brew as well. Linux Brew sounds like it's an Mac OS compatibility thing, because Brew is like your equivalent of apt-get. But anyway, so we then go into Laravel, right? And this is like, in this case, it's been configured to be somewhat similar to the Windows, user directory type thing, because that structure is useful if this is a computer and not a server. But if this were a server, it would have a directory public HTML on an Apache server. This is the root directory referred to here. So the root directory here is like everything, like you can it kind of just inserts everything up to public HTML. Then after that, this, in a classic Apache server, everything past this point is directories. Make sense? Then query parameters, we don't have to worry about that. So Laravel and other frameworks and APIs and all of that kind of fun stuff, they take a slightly different approach to this problem. In Laravel, we prevent a packet from being routed automatically into the folder system, right? We prevent this from being folders. This becomes just a string. It's the routing, it's web.php that decides what actually gets accessed, what actually gets loaded. Does this make sense? So, when I'm here and I write a rule like, if I get foo, I want to view the hello file, right? What I'm effectively doing is I'm decoupling the URL from the directory structure, right? If I try to access these folders, Laravel will prevent me. So for example, if I wanted to get to this hello.php directly, I would have to go through resources/view/hello.php.
Can you show us
Yes, no doubt. So, resources slash view slash hello.php. So, under an Apache server, this would work. 404 not found. Pretends it doesn't exist. It definitely exists.
But it's protecting it.
It's protecting it. Precisely.
Oh, I love it, protect.
Well, you might have sensitive stuff in there. Right?
Can you access resources only?
Not likely. No. So you remember when we, way back in fundamentals, when we talked about public versus private variables? This is like making everything private, right? You must go in through the specified interface. If you don't use the specified interface as defined in the routing file, then you don't have access to anything. And that's a good thing, because, you know, for example, it would probably be bad if the user were able to access your, you know, your environment configuration file, or things in your configuration file like your database password, right? Under a classic Apache server, someone could just go in, access config database.php, you know, and if it didn't echo anything, I suppose it would just run and return nothing, but, you know, people shouldn't be able to touch it. People shouldn't be allowed to touch it if it's not one of your specific specified routes in, right? That makes sense? That being said, it is useful to have folders. So if you want to have folders inside of View, you can use them. You can say, for example, you know, I don't know, what's a type of bird? A hawk. We can put, move, there we go. We can put hello.blade.php inside of the hawk directory. Now, if we go back to our thing here, and we go to start, we're back to the original web page. We have to put in a route to that view file now, which is accurate. So going back to VS Code, I'm just going to tighten this up. These two are basically doing the same thing, so I'm getting rid of this one. Route, get, end, start and end, whatever. If we access hawk.hello, now you can use directories. So if you want something like a directory structure, you can get it, right? You can put directories inside of your views folder. Once you do that, you access them using dots instead of file directories, which is kind of similar to how Java does packages. Does that make sense? You don't need that for the assignment, though.
That's great.
So, good. So,
Right?
Why don't we take it a little early? Yeah. All right. I think let's just take some time to let all of this information percolate, and let's resume class at 11:01. So, well, here we are again. So,
Professor, you will be, watching the total eclipse?
yes, yeah,
You live, where it's happening? You
I
live in
do,
Hamilton?
yeah, I live in Hamilton, yeah, so, yeah.
Mine is
We
not
got
that.
little glasses for the kids and everything
That's nice.
from the library. Yeah, the eclipse is,
It's Monday.
I mean, the next time we're going to be having a total solar eclipse in this region is gonna be like,
144.
yeah, quite a long distance. I'll be dead, I'm sure.
More than 120.
Yeah. It'll be great except for the tourists. Fortunately, I think there's probably going to be enough sky to go around, you know. Space on the ground, maybe not so much, but space up there, there's plenty, you know. So I'd like to, at this point, I'd like to see how far we can get with this. I'm going to adjust the requirements of the assignment in concert with how far we get in all of this, all right? So what this may mean is that you may have to fall back on some other PHP to, like our previous PHP knowledge, to do things that we didn't quite have time to get to. But without doing the routing, you can't get anything working at all. So that's an important topic. So let's leave routing where it is for the time being, and let's come back to, let's talk about databases. All right? So I'll give you, let me show you what assignment 6 looks like. Some of you may have looked at this already. Let me show you what assignment 6 looks like, sort of independent of any modifications I'm going to make to it. So, in general, this is not a million miles off of the running MVC example that we've had in class for a number of weeks now. You have an SQL table containing a collection of doctor records. Doctor records should have first name, last name, specialty, and city, and an auto-incrementing primary key. These are all things that we should already know how to do. When the user requests localhost/app in the browser, they should be presented with a page that lists the doctor records in an HTML table. So you want your view to contain an HTML table which has all of the doctor records in it. Again, not so very far off of the example code that we've had in class so far. In our case, the in-class example, we were creating divs to contain these records. But if you look at some of the other example code that's published on Canvas, you'll find that HTML tables are used instead, so I recommend taking a look at those. You need a delete column in the table which contains a link D for each record in the table, and when the link is clicked, the page should reload and that record should be deleted, deleted from the database. An HTML form below the table should allow the user to enter values for first name, last name, specialty, city, and city using text inputs and submit these values using a submit button. So we need a delete operation, we need an insert operation, we need a select operation. All of our basic ones. When the submit button is clicked, it should reload the page and a new record should be created and added to the doctor's table using the input submitted by the user. It says use a controller to implement the above functionality, but we'll see if we have time. That's one part that we might not have time for. We might have to do this with just our knowledge of routing. So, you do not need to implement any form validation or styling of the page. Once you've done that, zip it up, send it to me, I will grade it at some point.
Just a question, it's exactly the same that we did it in assignment 3, right?
Is that the same database with the doctors? I forget. No?
I think so, right? It has a patient information.
Student name, behavior, you name.
Student name, yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Behaviors.
Highly similar, but this time it's with Laravel.
So we have to make a table and report it too, or are you going to provide something?
Oh, like the actual SQL table?
Yes.
No, I don't have one to provide you, so just pick something up. Yeah. Even having like something small like 3 entries in your table is that's enough. I'm just looking for the concept to be demonstrated. So let's take a look at the mark breakdown. So records table, if you don't get that, you can't get much else in the way of marks, right? Because everything sort of relies on it. Create and delete are both operations that you have a certain amount of points allocated. This guy, these two, are ones that I am considering not requiring as a requirement of the assignment. I don't know if we'll get to them in class today. Basically, if we don't get to it today, it's not going to be on the assignment. It's not going to be a requirement, okay? Because I want our Friday class to be a work period for working on assignment 6. Is that fair? Good. So, that being said, we need to know how to access our database. So, fortunately, quite a bit has been pre-configured for us. Once again, in our VM. So, in order to connect to the database has to be running. Laravel itself does not contain the database. It must connect to the database the same way that PHP was connecting to the database. So, please launch XINF. You will be requested to enter your password, which is of course Laravel. You get this. Do not close either of those screens, or else it'll shut down the server. So, manage servers. This is the Unix interface for XAMPP, which is slightly less verbose than the Windows interface. But if you start MySQL database and start Apache server, there you go. In a moment, they will have started, and there you have it. So, if you take a look at the configuration settings for this MySQL database, we'll notice that our port number is 3306. Let me show you where that number appears. So, right here. Inside of your Laravel directory, there is a file called .env. .env sets the environment variables used by Laravel. Some of these include the database information. So if you want to change something about the database, for example, what the database's name is, this is where you do it, in .env. So for example, let's just quickly run through these, all right? First, DB connection. MySQL, that is the type of SQL server we are connecting to. So far so good. DB host, 127.0.0.1. Does anybody know what that one is?
It's an IP.
It is an IP address. Do you know which IP address it is?
It's a localhost IP address.
Correct. That is localhost, right there. So the database host is localhost here. If you were running a server, a remote server somewhere, and you had to configure Laravel to connect to it, that's where you would put the IP address of the database that you were trying to access. Port number. This is, in our case, for Laravel, for the XAMPP installation. You'll notice that that is the same as the port number on XAMPP. Database. That is the name of the database. And username is root, password is blank, the same as is normally the case with XAMPP. So, let's access phpMyAdmin. Localhost /phpMyAdmin. And there you have it. You don't even have to specify the port number. So, this XAMPP install has been pre-configured with a database called Laravel. You can see that it has but a single table, dogs, containing a very small amount of data. However, it is our object to be able to retrieve this data into our web application. Is this making sense so far? So, it's actually reasonably simple, but let's first set up a route for it. So let's set up a let's set up testDB, a route for that. So, function. There we go. Now, we have a PDF on routing as well. So our means of accessing the database, in the same way that we had route, : get, post, etc., we have DB, database, : select for select queries. So we can say data is equal to database colon select star from, I would use capitals. Select star from dogs. And then, to test the database functionality, we will just return the contents of that database. Make sense? Opening up our web browser. If we enter in test db, syntax error, every time, oh my goodness. Yeah. Fortunately, since the missing semicolon is one of the easier ones to fix. Sorry?
Just checking how you access it.
This guy?
Test. Oh, got it.
Easy, right?
Yes.
And there you have it. There's your data. Okay. So, having the data is not quite so good as using the data. So, let's set up a template array and pass this to a view. Make sense? Rather than, okay, so let's see, let's do a new root. Root doggos. There we go. Rather than simply returning the JSON encoded data, let's return a view of doggo, there we go, or just dog. The dog view. Pardon me. Thank you. So, if we provide a second parameter to view, this allows us to pass data into the view. It expects an associative array. It will convert the values of the associative array into variables. So although data is an array label, or a key value inside the template array here, once we enter the view, data will become a variable. Does this make sense? So far so good? Better to see it in practice? So let's go and make our dog file dog.php. There you go. Dogs. Now, when I was preparing for this was the tricky part. N code. So now, remembering our root, we are accessing doggos. Let's take a look. Undefined variable name. Did I get it wrong? Sorry, just give me a second. This is in the blades. Not quite.
Just on here.
And some part of them, we are doing.
Not gonna be able to avoid it. I was hoping to avoid getting into blade. But, okay.
It's June 14th. And the 4th.
Other updates.
And the other one is on the 14th as well. Or it's Sunday.
So double opening and closing curly braces are equivalent to opening PHP and closing PHP tags with an echo statement.
Oh.
So, but in order for you to use these blade constructs, you must include .blade.php instead of just .php.
Oh.
So,
So we have to.
there.
So So Professor, what does the blade do?
So it's basically, you know how PHP is a little bit clunky for like making HTML? It's an attempt to make the process simpler by requiring fewer characters and making things a little bit more straightforward. Ah, there we are. Okay, so this is how you get data in. So, let me just split up and down here. So, that's the route. And this is the PHP file. So you'll notice that the data label inside of the TPO just gets converted to a variable named data once we're inside of the PHP document. Did you get it working?
Yeah, I think so. No. Did I do something? No.
Save it. Let's try it. There we go.
Okay, thank you. So,
Show me that error again. Oh, yeah, get rid of your PHP. Yeah. The double braces are intended to replace that. There you go. Doing okay? Got it? Good? Get rid of the open those tags. Yep. Yep. Get rid of
oh, what?
the, because the double curly braces are meant to replace that. Good. So, we now have data. If we wish to construct a table from this data, then we need a little bit more code construct. So, there are, so in the Laravel Blade template PDF, there's a number of different ways you can do stuff that are given here, which are very useful. So for example, if statements. This is how you do an if statement using Blade. You, instead of having all those clunky PHP braces, you just have @ symbols at the beginning of the line, and that takes care of it. Similarly, with loops. So, for example, the for each loop may be of particular interest here. So, @ for each dog data as dog. And for each. And then table row and table row. It's very useful to view the raw data because that gives you what you're actually accessing, right? So, oh, that'll need one of those as well. ID, and TD, dog, at name, and TD. Wrap that in a table. There we go. That is an HTML table, but it doesn't have any borders, so you can't see the lines, so just give me a second here. Style, end style, TD gets border 2 pixels solid black. There you go. It's an HTML table. Look good? So you can see that, like, that wasn't too bad, right? That's not a lot of effort in comparison to raw PHP. And that's kind of the point of this, is to make it easier to be able to perform these types of operations. You can mix this stuff in with regular HTML in a much more fluid manner. Does this make sense? Did everybody get this working?
I was looking at your typing language.
Which files? Have I taken the spaces out here? Yeah. Oh, I think for each, the E in each. Oh, it is capitalized in mine, so that's not it. May I?
You have a syntax error?
Yeah. So this is, it's cool because it'll show you what's actually inside of your stuff. So, let's see. Oh. That'll do it.
Oh, really?
There we go. Got it. It's always like one character, you know? You look like you're having one.
Mhm.
What's your hair look like? Unfound property.
Did I miss something?
Yes. So, name.
Oh, I need names. Oh, see, this is all the time.
Is it working? Is it working?
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Yes, it works.
perfect.
Thank you, Professor.
You're very welcome. So this is all well and good. However, we should also be concerned with our other database operations, right? So, for example, how do we perform some action on one of these items, right? Or do you want to do deletion or do you want to do insertion first?
Insertion first.
Insertion first? Okay. Well, first we need the form, right? So since this is such a very, very simple database, and we only have the one parameter in it, we don't really need, like, the number is, I believe, an auto-incrementing primary key, so maybe it is, maybe it isn't actually. Let me take a look. Yeah, ID is an auto-incrementing key, so we don't have to provide it, we can just provide a dog name and add it to the list. This is basically the fanciest array that you've ever seen in your lives. So, I know it says in the assignment that it would be nice if, like you're not required to do any styling, but it would be nice if it looked a little better than that. So, we have a form, method, what are we doing? Let's post the data, and action, app. Or, yeah. We want to, oh no, it isn't app, it's doggos. There we go. We want this, so action is like, that's the URL that we're trying to attack, trying to send to, right? So if we save that, refresh, oh, wait, we need a submit button. What am I thinking? Input, type, equal to submit. Value is equal to submit. There we go. Now we have a submit button. So what happens if we, what's a good dog name?
Rusty.
Dusty?
No,
Rusty?
yeah, you can say Rusty.
Rusty. Submit. The post method is not supported for route doggos. So, we don't have a route for post requests, do we? That's okay, we shall add one. Remember that in this guy, I'm gonna just, up you, get out, get out of here. Notice that our route specifies get.
Yeah, it doesn't have post.
Precisely. So, we need to set one up for post. Which we can basically copy paste,
And
change post here, because the post is still going to require the data in the database, right? So, basically, we're still gonna have to perform this functionality here anyway, so you can just copy paste it now. In theory, is that what you're supposed to do? No, but whatever. We're just trying to get it working. So, what we now need to do is a database.
address or name, database name.
Think about our CRUD operations. If we're trying to add a new dog to the database, what is our operation? Insert, thank you.
Okay.
So we're going to database, insert, then we shall provide. I know I'm kind of working backwards here, but, yeah.
No,
So-
it doesn't.
Insert into dogs name values, and then we will have to provide a new dog variable. And that's where we're going to get the new past parameter there. But for now, I'm just going to set that to a default value. And if you recall, with the PDO object, we left a question mark here to be the place for the new data. Let me just double check to see what Laravel wants. Oh, yeah, it's still question mark. Good. So we put our question mark in there. There we go. We have an insert operation. Let's see that this works. Refresh. Resend. Doesn't like. There we go. Try again. Submit. Page expired. Okay. But let's take a look at our database. See if we're getting stuff in there. No. Okay.
So when I click on submit, it says page expires.
Yes.
Is it normal?
Well, it's certainly not what we want. Let me just see here. Okay, so we're missing something in the form that Laravel expects. Good. See, this is why Stack Overflow exists. So in order to be able to send a form, you must include @CSRF. Right there. I guess. Let's see though. I actually fixed it.
Yours working?
Is it?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Can I see your code? Did I forget to save it or something? Oh, I bet I know what it was. I hadn't like reloaded the page on the browser side. Yeah.
I'm able to, mine is working,
Let me just
it's only showing.
re-enable these two. That will actually perform the insert.
Yep.
Fido, Fido, Fido. Good.
Yep.
All right.
It is working.
Working? Okay, cool. And you got it working, obviously.
No.
Not working? Oh. That looks like a spelling error. Okay. So now, did it work? So now we need to take the form data and put it in. So in theory, Laravel probably has a particular way of doing this, but let's just see if our basic PHP will serve us well here. Filter input. Input underscore post. Value as name. Filter. Alright, sanitize special jars. I think that's it. Let me just check the PHP documentation. it's not giving me my autocomplete, probably because I'm not supposed to be doing it. Has filter sanitize special jars. Okay. There we go. Let's try her out. And here's a question. Will it let me just get out the will it just let me access it that way? It will. Ah, okay. I must have misspelled it. Sanitize, perhaps. Yes. There you go. So it does work. So, get and post parameters may be read in the manner that we have been doing so far, so long as you spell everything correctly, but so long as you spell everything correctly has always applied. So, putting the code back up on the screen for a moment. Who's got it working? Who doesn't? You got it working? You got it working? Good. No, not working? Not working? You think it's working? Is it working? Yes?
Yes.
Yes. Awesome.
The test today, the long questions. How many questions were there? 10 or 6? 6. The other one was 10. No, it was 4. 4, oh. And it's long. Okay. Supposed to be done on Monday, but she forgot, so I had to send her an email. But she said, okay, we can do it tomorrow. It was too late.
Doesn't seem to be reloading the page.
Yeah, and I have to do it tomorrow,
Maybe it
the
does.
band test. The
That's
short questions.
Short one.
Did you do the quiz?
No.
You didn't?
Yeah, it's
I
not
did the quiz.
sending requests. That's
No, I was too
wrong.
focused on,
Dirty.
I was too focused on the previous one. So I had to, because my assignment was supposed to.
That's not
I didn't do
a-
the assignment, I didn't do it.
The last question of the assignment is,
Is it different?
It is.
But
The
Yeah.
previous,
Why is
this one.
Submit
New
will
one?
trigger a HTTP request when it's clicked. A
I'm
button
trying to get as much stuff
doesn't,
done.
it, like you can hook it up to
So
an
that
Ajax
I'm not.
want to, That's,
Yeah.
Already worried about a stupid idea thing.
Yeah, it's too lengthy.
we have now a different error,
And then what's the user-centered design?
which is probably a spelling
And
error.
we have an exam, right, for the user-centered design? What
Oh,
is
yeah.
gonna be about?
There's no
Slides,
Her talking about the slides.
What?
anything.
Oh, yeah.
What's in the slides?
Spade.
Like, there is nothing in the slides, to be really honest.
It's gonna be open book anyway, so.
I think so. Online,
Oh.
right?
It's on.
And whatever.
Like an empty
The
string
info
that still
that
gets
is
sent, right?
Oh, that was
confused.
No trouble. And it works.
I think mine is working, right? So when I click submit without entering any data.
Boom. Did you get it working? Excellent. So far so good. Now, so the whole point of this is to try to not have to write any JavaScript whatsoever, right? Shall we do a delete button?
Yes.
Enough? I realize, like, I'm giving away large chunks of the assignment, but
It's good.
hopefully you guys appreciate that, because, you know, I don't know, like okay, can I ask the class, what is your impression of Laravel so far?
I don't like it.
You don't like it?
I like it.
Okay, you don't like it, you do like it, what do you
It's
think?
okay.
You don't know, undecided?
It's okay.
It's okay? So, I guess that means that
50-50.
it's like, it averages out to like, meh, yeah,
I have a question.
sure.
What does the CSRF do?
I have no idea, you just need it.
So, okay, for everything or
Just for the forms, so, the way that I found that you needed that is, I Googled it. I Googled the error that we were getting, which was a 419 response. We were trying to send a post request, and fortunately Stack Overflow said, you need that in Laravel. And it's like, okay, I'll try it, and I did, and then it worked. And so that's the end of the problem. But I don't know why, I don't know what it's for. The thing about frameworks is like, unlike PHP where you can have like some kind of idea of what's going on under the hood, there's so much going on under the hood that it's really not useful, it's not a useful use of your brain cells to like try to pick apart Laravel itself and see how it operates. So if you can get it to work, that's like good enough. Unless you want to be a Laravel developer, in which case you need to know how it works, but you really just need to know how to use it, right? So, delete button. So let's add a new cell to the table. Contains a link, has the word delete, ends the link, right? So far, if we refresh, you don't have to resend the data every time. There we go, we now have a delete thing, right? It doesn't have a link yet, that's the next part. href is equal to. Now, what we want to do is we want to send back to the server the particular entry we wish to delete. We've actually used this method before, but we'll do it again. We'll say it's doggos / delete, or we can, So there are different ways of doing this, right? One way we could do it is, you know what, I'll show you two different ways of doing it. This is the way to do it with a link. This will require more advanced knowledge of routing. So, delete, and then we will want to delete entry dog ID. Okay? So, if we take that, oh man, let me just, you know what, I think top and bottom would even work better for this, no? Like tile top and bottom, can I do that? I don't know what the shortcut is in Ubuntu. So this is where we are. Ah, left and right. Small. Small. There we go. So now, if you take a look in the bottom corner here, you can see the links that have been generated. Delete 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Right? Are we that far? Good, 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 good. Error?
Mm-hmm, Oh,
Handle error. Dogs.
Oh, why I'm skipping over my test? It's my first, I don't know what's wrong with me.
Oh, it's not you, right?
I
If-
always, yeah, I'm always skipping one letter somehow.
If I may make a comment about the class in general, you folks have improved like 10,000% since I saw you all in September in this respect. Right? Like every single one of you have gotten much better at that particular problem. Because like in September, it was like, holy cats, like braces eluded most of you, you know? But, you know, you've improved.
Thank you.
That's good. I'd like to take a moment to recognize your improvement and the achievements of the class. So anyway, we click on a delete, we get a 404 not found. What is our problem?
Very good.
This link doesn't have a root,
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
right? So we need to add a root for it. Are you guys beginning to understand like what roots are for now that we're actually using them for stuff? Hopefully. So we need a root for these delete links. Because they're just links, they're not actually being sent with like a delete. They're being sent with a get parameter as well. So this I wanted to show you because this involves something we haven't covered yet about rooting, which is how to actually extract a parameter and then pass it in, right? So fortunately it's reasonably easy, he says. So you write the general form here, right? So it's doggos dot slash delete slash and then the ID number of the dog we want to delete, right? So the way that you include that is like that.
Oh, no.
And then you have to pass it in to the function. So, all this is doing right now is if I click on one of these deletes, I will get the ID that I requested echoed back at me. So 6 yields 6. 2 yields 2. The purpose of this, right? Now that we've got this done so far, what you need to do with this ID, which is now a variable that exists, is you just need to plop it into a database delete operation, the same way that we're putting the new dog name into our insert operation. Right? So let's do that. Database, delete, from dogs where ID is equal to question mark ID. And then of course we still need this bit. Oh, did I save? Oh, I've got the return up there. That won't do at all. Ah! My SQL syntax is bad.
We need a B, delete.
Oh, I've got delta. Alright. Thank you. See, even I do it. There we go. Delete. Uh-oh.
No, it's doing the same thing.
I was able to delete one. 404 not found. Oh,
So we are select.
oh, look at the URL. It's doggos/delete.
Yep.
Yeah, that won't do. So let's go to our view. Maybe delete this one. Delete/delete. It's relative to, oh, okay, I know what's going on. So the problem is, so the problem is that this thing here is relative to the current path, right? It considers this to be the current path, so when you click a game, it adds to the current path rather than just adding the bit that you need. So, what can I do? That? Maybe. Aha! If you put this guy at the front, that means that it's now an absolute path, not a relative path. So it doesn't perform that problem.
Oh, there we go.
Those are all.
Still not working.
Okay, 2 problems? Okay. I think you're missing a closing quote or something.
simplification.
Oh, yeah,
Doesn't matter?
it does, yeah, it has to match. Yeah, this is a parameter, right?
Oh,
And if you delete,
oh,
try again now. Yep, it's working.
thank you.
Can you switch back to
The web,
the root?
Oh, it doesn't matter if I write it in a small,
no,
no?
no. I do that when I'm teaching. Oh, there it should be the same, right? But I do that when I'm teaching, so that students can tell the difference between like the command keywords and the regular words in the query. So let me see what error. Oh. When it hits this, it quits the function before it does anything else.
Yeah,
So
okay, I did not, I copied it and I didn't delete it.
Oh, yeah.
all good. Good. Good.
Perfect, yes. Yes, it's working now.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
So,
So when I reload it, it's gonna be the data, it's not gonna have that, the one that I deleted, it's deleted from the database, right? So
yes. Yeah, these changes are going right back to the database.
Professor, but I'm not able to submit now.
Me neither.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm getting an error.
Oh, hold on, let me try something.
Same problem.
Let's see, so,
I get the same one.
Make action /doggos. Let's try that.
It's because it's adding a doggos on after delete.
Yes. Reload. ASDF. Submit. 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 Delete. 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 Submit. Submit. Delete. Delete. There you go.
So should we add an absolute part to the doggles?
Yes.
Right.
Hmm?
It's working.
Let's go. Good. It's working. Everything seems to be working.
Mine is not.
So, it's not working?
Oh,
Yes, working. Yes. Title is deleted and something is added.
Good.
Lola.
So, that's one way to do it. Another way you can do it would be, you can actually put a little form inside these things. As well. Input, here input type is equal to submit, value equals delete. And the advantage of doing that, action will be /doggos. The advantage of that is that you can actually make the method delete. Right? If it's a link, then it's somewhat opaque how you would go about setting the method. Although maybe, I don't know, do links have a method? Can you set method in a link? That's an interesting question. Okay, so the answer is not easily. Okay, so you can't do this with a regular link. So there you go. We can put a bunch of delete buttons inside of a table.
But it doesn't actually delete.
Hmm?
It doesn't actually delete them.
No, it doesn't, because we don't have a route for it, right? This is now another path again, right? So now we are sending to doggos using method delete, right? Oh, and we still need to put like the ID in here somewhere, right? So yeah, we can put here. Because, under this sort of thing, it's like, do you really want something like delete to occur in your URL? Probably not. You can set up the root differently, get rid of delete, still have the same function, you just have it handle a delete request. Oh. Method is not supported, but I just supported it. Oh, I need to reload the page. Delete! Come on. No. Okay, maybe I'm trying to be too fancy.
So should we not do that?
No, don't do that. I was trying to be too fancy. Let's just keep it basic. Good. So, I will, at this point, run down anything which I think is useful or interesting about all of these slides that we skipped in favor of practical demonstrations.
Professor,
Yes.
I have an issue with mine.
Okay.
So I'll show you. So let's see, if I delete 21 and 20, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I reload it, it's added 1.
Me too.
It's added one.
Yeah.
That was there before.
Whenever I refresh it and
See, there is nothing, right? It's five entries, right?
no, it's fine.
So when you hit refresh, you're requesting the
Oh.
delete 16. So,
Okay,
but yeah, I don't think that was actually the case.
okay, yeah, probably, okay. Oh. One more issue. Sorry.
Yes.
So now it's going to 22. Because
Yeah,
I-
that's fine.
That's fine, it's okay, because in database I have all these entries, that's fine?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's like, it's just not reusing old integer values in the primary key, that's all.
It's associated with some, okay, got it.
Yeah. I mean, technically it's not associated with anything anymore,
Yep.
but,
Still,
okay, so let's think for a moment about how a database would work, right? Let's say you have the programming task of assigning a unique ID to things that are coming in, right? Do you want to search through your entire database for unused numbers every time somebody requests one? Probably not, because it doesn't matter. All it matters is that they're unique, not that they're all used, right? So all it's doing is keeping a counter, right, of how many things have been entered so far and increments it every time it gives a number out. It's like a take a number system, right? If half your patients have left the waiting room, you know, the thing that gives out the next tick number to the next patient that comes in doesn't know that, right? So that's,
It's like a token number, basically.
yes, basically. So, so let's talk a little bit about the template engine. So this is echoing into a HTML. We've seen it a few times already. PHP code can be used within Blade templates, which means templates can use vanilla PHP like the MVC pattern. So most of the time in Laravel, if you don't know how to do something in the approved Laravel fashion, you can make recourse to your vanilla PHP that we've been studying in the course so far. Blade view files are compiled into native PHP and cached until changed. So basically, Laravel is not operating off of Blade files directly. It compiles them into PHP and then just runs the server normally. Yes, we know that. We know. So there are different ways of passing information in. This is the way that we used by passing it as a second parameter to view. You can use a with method as well. You can also use view share, which will allow you to pass parameters everywhere all the time without having to, like, it just basically makes them global, and it doesn't matter which view you're loading. So up to now, right, we have thought of views as being whole web pages, right? This is not necessarily the case, right? If we wanted to, we could write a view file just for, you know, the table that we're generating or something, or just for the header, right? Maybe you want to be able to, I don't know, let's say you are working on a website and you have like a special Christmas promotion that you want to run, and you want a special header on the website just for the Christmas promotion that runs like between certain times of year or something like that, right? If you have, you know, a folder in your views folder, headers, this header, that header, the other header, you can take those headers, right, and you can integrate them as views, right? You can integrate multiple views together, which allows you to deal with portions of the website modularly, right? Does that make sense? Am I talking guff? So the code, another way of putting it, if you have two different headers that you want to select between, the code for each of those two headers is contained in its own view file. You use those views depending on, you know, whichever circumstance. In the Christmas special example that I gave, you would have some kind of PHP code that would check what the date and time is. If it's between a particular range, view Christmas header rather than view regular header, for example, right? Good. So, in terms of direct comparison, this thing is syntactically equivalent to this, except not, because it needs a PHP here as well, right? So you can see that the Blade template version is shorter and easier to write. It is also more readable.
Roger, I have a question
Mhm.
to your previous example. So the vanilla PHP do the same thing, right? We can create the Christmas view page header in the vanilla PHP
Certainly,
as well as Blade templates, right?
absolutely.
So what will make it more easier, the Blade or the vanilla PHP?
Laravel is easier and faster once you know how it works and once you're sort of fluent in it. In vanilla PHP, you have to do a lot of the connecting things up yourself, right? Yeah.
Because the Laravel does not require the config because it's automatically connecting us to it, right? So
Yeah, a lot of it, so in Laravel,
the model view is taken
much of the model and the controller
control.
is, it's either done for us or done in ways that are easier for us to do, right? Vue, like when it comes to like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript,
It's the same.
that's, it doesn't really help that much with that, except to make integrating PHP a bit easier,
Yeah.
right? So if you want, we can do a quick example of this. So, let's say we have, man, this print is super tiny. Yeah, there we go. So let's make a new file in the views. You guys don't have to follow along with this one, this is going to be quite short. Say module 1 dot PHP H1, this is module 1. Right? Not even bothering with the HTTP template because the intention is that this gets integrated into something else, right? New file, module 2 dot PHP, H1, this is module 2. And then views, new file, body.php. Would put other stuff here. Right? So, this all hinges on the fact that the view function basically operates like the include function, except it's returning the string data as a string, rather than returning the string data and just shunting it directly into the packet. So, for example, route get modularization, which function which if which equals 1, else, there we go, page is equal to empty, page concatenate equals, because this is PHP, remember that in PHP dot means concatenate, so we have a concatenate equals the same way we have a plus equals in other languages. View module 1 else page concatenate equals 2, page dot equals view body, just for the sake of, well, that should be enough. Return page. Yeah, I have a syntax error. Thank you. There we go. So now, saving, going back to our app, modularization 1, this is module 1, 2, this is module 2. And you can see, like, I'm just using a command line or a URL parameter here because it's fast and easy. If you wanted to do something more complicated, you would absolutely be able to do that. I don't know, like a random number generator or based on database outputs or time or anything you want. But that's the point, is like we're mixing and matching chunks of HTML code together now, right? Like, you could have a new file, header.php, right, which is just this bit. And then you could have a footer.php, which is just that bit, right? And then comparing the source here, right? You can see that this is all I have in terms of HTML. I don't have all that header information, which is lovely. Like, for example, your Bootstrap stuff, wouldn't it be nice not to have to, re-link the Bootstrap CDN in every single page that you make? Wouldn't it be nice to be able to put that in a header? For example, right? If we try this, we gotta modify this. So page will be equal to view header, and then page concatenate view footer, right? Header and footer. Throw that in, reload, and you can see that doctype HTML is all in there now. All of our nice, lovely metadata is in there now. And what we get to work on as an individual file is like actually just the body, right? Which is useful. It makes the file more readable. A more readable file means that you can work on it easier and faster, which means that you're a more productive developer, right? Make sense? So, the thing I'm trying to demonstrate with that demonstration is that this is a very powerful system. It is possible to do that using PHP, like vanilla PHP, right? But,
But you have to link every other page.
yeah, you have to use include statements. But because you're in, like, because you're in a, because you've got it as a string, you can also, like, do some slightly interesting things with it. There's no reason you would ever want to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. Page, concatenate, paragraph, this page contains count page, or wait, no, string length, characters, right? And paragraph. Up to the point of this paragraph anyway, right? It's a string, so you can work it like it's a string, right? How useful is that? You know, perhaps there's an application for it, but you know, there's lots of useful and interesting things you can do with strings, right? Like search how many times a word is used in it or something. Like, you could do a thing where it's like, you know, like an inbuilt search thing in case you have a really crummy browser. It's like you could provide a word as a URL parameter and then go through and highlight every instance of the word here in HTML on the server side, which I don't know, again, I don't know if there's an application for that, but you know? Yeah, cool. So, this one's kind of useful. So, a for else is a for each loop, but it also has a case in case you want to put something where there are no entries present, right? You don't often see else cases on loops, but there's a useful example of it. So that way you don't, like, it minimizes the amount of code you have to write, like, you know, test is, you know, if data structure, contents, non-empty, then do this, else do that. It just works it in as a case on the loop itself, which could be useful, right? Comments, this is what comments look like in a Blade template file. You can include other views in a Blade template directly instead of using the, you know, I was kind of like abusing the router a little bit in that last example. This is probably where you would want to do that kind of thing. So, yep, anyway. I feel like I'm running out of steam and I don't really have anything more useful to say. I'm basically like, look at this, look at this, look at this. So, I think that you folks, let me just quickly review assignment 6 and see if there's anything I want to. Okay. By the power vested in me as instructor of this course, I hereby strike the requirement to use controllers and methods as we did not cover them.
Perfect.
I will reduce the point value of the assignment to 85.
Really?
Yes. Well, as opposed to like deciding where else to put it, right? Oops. Delete column. Okay. That's not a useful interface. Come on, Canvas. Canvas is crummy software, though.
It's still showing 100%.
Yes. There. We didn't talk about controllers, so we're not going to use controllers here. It also requires declaration of objects in PHP, which we didn't really talk about at any point. So there you go. All good? You feel you have a decent handle on assignment 6 now?
Professor, I have a question. Do we start with any kind of data, like, intermediate,
Oh, like
SQL in a database, like,
Just make it up.
like anything?
Anything, yep.
Or?
I'm a doctor, so I should be in your database.
Okay.
My specialization is nerdery.
2 is enough, or you want more?
Um,
At least 3, maybe?
like, give me 3. I wanna be able to delete more than once
Okay.
without adding, like, I need to be able to test your data a little bit, so give me at least 3 entries, but it doesn't really matter what they have. Okay?
It's just delete and create, right? So nothing else? Or-
It's delete, create, but you also need to be able to view it, so
Yeah.
3 database operations really. Just so happens they're the ones we did in class.
That's what I was thinking.
Yes, good. Wait, there's a thing here. Goodbye. There we go.
And Professor, I downloaded in my SD disk. I think so it's gonna work at home too, right?
So that's a good point. Before we go, let's close. Let's see how to export the thing. So this little power button up here is your Ubuntu power off. So you want to power off the machine from inside of the VM, as opposed to just closing the VMware thing, right? You don't just close the window, because that's the same thing as pushing the power button on the PC without turning off the program, right? It's underneath this. So click X.
So it will save the code that we have?
Yes, that'll save everything. Right click, export to OCI. There we go, format. Shut. Yeah, so rather than Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, you want your format to be Open Virtualization Format, which is OVA. That gives you just a file. Okay?
Export at once.
No, right click on it. Here, right click. Export to OCI. Yep.
And then what was it?
Format, Open Virtualization Format 2.0.
Oh, okay. 2.0, perfect, and,
Next. Finish. There you go. It's working. Once it's done, like it's got a lot of data to write, right? But once it's finished, that's your file. Take it with you. And looks like there's a class waiting to get in, so we'll wrap up there.